home to 7.6 billion people, ever evolving, ever changing. Since as far back as 250,000 years ago, man has been making his mark on this planet, shaping and molding it, creating grand societies of intelligence, wisdom, and prosperity. Never until the last 100 of years has there been a more complete library than the one that laid at Alexandria, or a longer structure than the Great Wall of China, although I think someone might be trying to compete for that record. With the creation of civilizations around 10,000 BC, more culture and prosperity was created than ever before. However, along with it came crime, greed, chaos, and death. Just 500 years ago, 50% of people didn't make it to adulthood. Cities grew only by immigration, as more people died in them than were born until the 1900s. It is most safe to say, today is the best point in time to be living. The world still has problems though. There's still starvation, corruption, and oppression. 1 in 7 people go every day without eating, most of whom live in underdeveloped countries. This, however, can all be changed. Here we are going to create a new society for the world, based on these 10 pillars. Naturally, the world needs a leader. Now, who could possibly govern all the citizens of Earth? In short, nobody can. The world is just too diverse to have one representative. Due to this, there will be an organization such as the United Nations. Each respective nation will have a proportional representation and a fixed representation in this system. This will work in the same way that the U.S. has senators and members of the House. Each nation will be given a senator of the Global Congress. Then, there will be a representative for every 50 million people that are in a country. There will also be a cap and a minimum. As some countries do not have 150 million people, they will receive 3 representatives as a minimum. Also, each country is limited to 10 representatives as to not have larger countries' legislations bully smaller countries. When deciding these representatives, there will be a strict voting freedom imposed in all countries. All countries will make voting easily accessible, and it will happen every 5 years. When elections are taking place, ballots will use a voting system called single transferable vote. This system is where voters rank their choices for office. Then, the top 3 to 10, based on representatives, are chosen proportionally to the amount of their votes. This means multiple members from different parties are all representative, with it being proportionalized to the amount of votes they received. These representatives will act as main governors, and along with local governments, they will enforce the laws written up by the United Nations. Specific regional laws are going to be proposed by the representatives to the UN, where there will be a global vote on the matter. This system will lead to zero fighting between nations in a more peaceful world. Military. As the world is to be at peace all over, a large standing military is not needed. However, there will be a police force around the world. This force will be maintained individually for each country. As to avoid language barriers and cultural boundaries, this is the best solution. These officers will then be assessed and trained by a special branch of the United Nations. The polices will all report to the United Nations, but will act on a nation-by-nation level as to not have troops from one nation be in another. This will help prevent hostile disputes among nations. Taxes are an extremely tricky problem for the world. Because many countries have different productions or different sources of income, a universal tax will be difficult. In total, each person will have a guaranteed 1% tax on their income that will go to the United Nations for funding and other programs. This would equate to about $1.37 trillion, according to our current average global income. The rest of the taxes will be decided by the nations independently. However, it will be strictly illegal to have a budget deficit. If this were to happen, the UN would manually reform the offender's tax code. This helps prevent countries from running into money problems down the line. Resources. Regions of the world are going to be divided into major exporting categories. If a country has a large lumber or oil production, it will be categorized by those individually. A country such as Iceland that specializes in fishing will be categorized as a food production country. A problem that seems like it would have an issue would be resource corruption. In countries like Saudi Arabia or the UAE, this is a problem, but it will not be in this world. One of the reasons education was emphasized so highly is that it combats this practice. It is relatively simple to send people to coal mines and have them work all day. With education, however, there will be less manual production of goods, and it will all become more automated. This will leave most of the citizens to work in well-paying industrial jobs rather than labor positions. Constitution. Every good society needs a basis, a foundation that is built on. This will be the purpose of the Constitution. This Constitution will be taken directly from the United States Constitution. In basic, every person born is a citizen, and, as such, are all entitled to basic human rights: food, shelter, and water. All of these will be provided, and we will touch back on that in a bit. As needed, the Constitution can also be amended if there are any changes that are needed to be made. These changes need to be ratified by at least 135 countries in order to be put into place. Food, shelter, and water. Now, shelter is very difficult, as it is too costly to have state-sponsored funding for housing. That will be left to individuals to take care of themselves. Water, however, is very important for life, as we all know, and because of this, there will be a lot of development into water desaturation, this being to remove the salt from seawater and make it drinkable. This is currently present in places like China today, and this will be heavily invested into in order to provide water for the world's citizens. When it comes to food, there will be a limit or ration to how much food someone can purchase. Someone is fine to grow their own food, but if they buy, there is a limit based on the members of a house. This is to help share the amount of food in the world so less of it gets wasted. The Internet. As the world is united under one system of legislature, the Internet will now be able to be regulated easier. Every person will be given an identifying number at birth, and it will work in the same way as a social security number. The special part is that it will be needed to log on to the Internet. This prevents anonymity and makes regulating crime on the Internet much easier. Although some people may say this takes away the freedom of privacy, it is a necessary compromise. There will be no freedom of looking at people's browser data, however. All transmissions are to be encrypted, and only an authorization from the UN Council on a matter after or during a trial to uncover information will allow the transmission to be looked at. This makes for a private yet safe Internet for the world. Crime. It is no doubt that no matter what people do, there will always be crime. The problem is how to minimize and contain it. For help, we will avoid looking at the US's punishment-based system. Instead, we will look to countries such as Norway. These countries have extremely low crime and repeat offender crime. This is in most part to the reform part of their punishment. Rather than making people suffer with time, they allow these people to become re-educated and prepare them to rejoin society. This is in contrast to the dumping of people on the streets that the US does. Prisons and local police are to be dealt with nation by nation, so there will not be one central prison. But all prisons will be processed and given 3-year licenses in the same way we have health inspectors. This will make sure that they are running correctly and not corruptly. I want this society to work out. It can't without you all. No matter how many laws or contracts or morals one may have, it is all up to the people to decide how they are going to interact and live with one another. Crime will still exist, and there will still always be a gap between the rich and the poor. The goal is to make the world the best place it can be. Humans are unrivaled in their capability, and are able to do this if they are willing to just believe in their neighbors, in one another. I hope you enjoyed this version of Utopia on Earth. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. Thank you.